Hey guys, take two. I did a whole video and realized I still had my headset plugged in, so there was no audio. Oh, man. My second game for Gen Con this year was a Pendragon campaign, or game, Pendragon game. And while I have played and run some Pendragon, it was, back, third or fourth edition kind of stuff. But there was a need, demand for it, and there was an overabundance of RuneQuest games available, so I got crunched down. So sure, yeah, I'll do it. I'll help out. I want to play games. I want to support Chaosium. So um, we didn't have. We had one minor technical glitch at the beginning with one of the players, but that was on their part, trying to get hooked up. But we got that player hooked in fine, and then got the final ticket set up, and then we started running. We did have a player later on in the game start to have connectivity issues on their end. Apparently there was some kind of a storm or something happened there, and there were some issues with their connectivity. So cut off the voice and just did text stuff. It worked. It got a little slow a couple times, but hey, it happens, right? So the scenario itself, there were times, because while the basic mechanics of Pendragon is fairly easy to understand, the intricacies of some of the quirkiness get to be are quirky, so it takes some getting used to. So every time we started doing something, it was a little rough at front, but it smoothed out really fast, and then things just kept happening. And I spent a couple days just going over die roll mechanics and combat skills stuff, and just skill descriptions. And then there's these mini games they play. There's the jousting mini game, and there's the hunting mini game, and this kind of stuff. So I'm trying to go through it to make sure I understand each of those pieces together. And I thought I had a reasonable grip on the game, but it became obvious that just not the first game you're running with the system is going to be rough, and it was at first, but it smoothed out really fast afterwards with things as they went through. As soon as these knights go through, they get invited to come on an adventure with three paths, and you go the first path, and you go to the second path, and you go to the third path, and there's different things that happen in each of those. The first path was jousting. Fairy knight, though they don't know it's a fairy knight. The fairy knights are kind of tough, and fairy mounts can be tough. And the fairy knight had a fairy capability where every time a player knight hit the fairy knight, the campfire flamed up and sparks flew over to the player knight and did a d6 worth of damage. And every time the fairy knight hit the player knight, the fairy knight would get healed by the amount of damage that the fairy knight did to the player knight. I completely forgot that piece. And I had forgotten about the fire piece early on too, so we did a little retcon piece on that. Probably should have just done one, because the first thing they did as soon as they noticed there was a bucket, okay, go over there. Is it full of water? Yeah, it's full of water. Dump it on the fire. Dump it on the fire. So there were 3 passes with the lances, and they got on foot and were doing sword to sword, and the fairy knight won every pass on the lance, which really hurt the other knight, the player knight. But once they got on the ground, the fairy knight just was rolling cruddy. I was rolling all kinds of 1s and 2s, and on the sword is a 23, so it's a +3 on those die rolls. So he's rolling 3s and 4s kind of thing, or 4s and 5s, a handful of times. So while he was successful, it wasn't enough to be higher than the success of the player knight. So it's a partial success. So he's able to block with his shield, does not do damage to the player knight. So player night, they start whacking, but player night eventually gets him down. Player night goes unconscious. Some of the players grab him, drag him out. They go and do first aid on him. The next person up goes freelances, sword fighting. I think it was just the two. I just swore at one point there were three of them that fought the Fairy Knight. Maybe it was just the two. Fairy Knight dies, bursting, flame, smoke, that kind of thing. And then there's the girl and the knight who finished off Fairy Knight. She clings to help me get home, do this, do that, the other. He gets an amore for her, an amore passion for her, and the Fairy Knight's horse apparently didn't like the Fairy Knight very well, so he's hanging around with this guy. She wants to get home. She doesn't have a horse, so they give the Fairy Knight the fairy horse to her, fairy mount. So she gets on the fairy mount, takes off. Now there is some background stuff that's on the player knight's background sheets that I didn't bother reading. I guess I should next time, because this girl is engaged to a guy, and I knew that from my reading of the scenario. She's engaged to marry this guy, but she has a paramour that she wants to hook up with and not get married to the guy. And her dad had set up this other marriage. So I knew that, but apparently these knights are actually they're involved with this marriage thing, and they're supposed to be bringing messages to Camelot, to King Arthur, about this marriage. And one of the knights is set on, in fact, he was bucking at Chalks about doing any of his adventure stuff. Hey, we need to get to Christmas Court. That's what we're here to do. But the other knights, apparently two of the knights were the messengers. They go, oh, let's do this adventure stuff. Yeah. So eventually they all go. Thank goodness, because if they don't, then there's no scenario. But he's bucking a lot of stuff as things go along. And you're here. You need to come with us. We need to take you to Camelot. No, I want to go to my dad. He doesn't. Takes off. So they go back to the fountain where the three maidens are, and they do first aid on everybody who had damage, and the maidens at the fountain have magic ointment, which heals even more than first aid does. So that really helped, because that one guy had been hurt pretty bad. So they do a bunch of healing up. Get the second damsel, go to the next arc, and there's a lady at a castle whose heart is frozen. Her husband died many years ago. It's all glum and dreary. Obviously this stuff's coming down in the environment, right? And all throughout the scenario, there's opportunities for the players to make awareness rolls where you can feed them information, and courtesy rolls to feed them information on how to react and to act and stuff like that, and fairy lore rolls on maybe this is magical kind of thing. So they get to the castle, and the damsel who's guiding. There's three damsels. Each one had their own arc. The second damsel's guiding her. Okay, somebody needs to warm this woman's heart. Melt the ice that's around her, it's encasing her heart, kind of thing, and bring her around. To do that, you need to do three things. You need to show her that you can defend her lands. So you need to go to a crossroads and do jousting for a week. You need to go on a boar hunt so that you can show her you can provide food for the castle. And then you need to show courtly manners, essentially composing and singing or playing and that kind of thing, to see that you're not all about combat and killing. And so the one guy who got hurt really bad has no interest in doing any of this stuff. He's married. He wants to get to Camelot and get things over with, but he needs the rest anyway. So do a chirurgeon role for him. He's going to be in long-term care, here for a week, just so we can get healing rolls done. And the rest of them go out for doing the lancet. Not all of them though. Oh, the knight that is in love with the girl already, he stays back. So that leaves me with 4 knights, one of which is a female knight, so she's not interested either, so she stays back. So I've only got 3 knights out at the crossroads doing the jousting thing, doing the competition deal for the lady of this keep. One of them unseats a knight on the first day, but is a generous knight, and we talked about this whole generous thing, and decides that she wants to get that check mark for generous, and so she gives him his stuff back, figuring if she wins again, she'll just keep that time and keep it very even kind of deal. But nobody else unseats anybody that first day. The second day, the first knight gets unseated, so he loses his horse and armor. He's able to borrow a horse from the other players. That's not an issue either. But finding armor, this guy's got size 20. He's huge, and nobody else has armor that would fit him. I went 1 up, 1 down. I maybe could have done 2, maybe. 2020 hindsight, I should have done 2 because somebody's got an 18 size and they could have just given him armor. But he was asking, well, is there any armor at the keep that he'd be able to borrow? So I made a roll. It was broad enough that, sure, why not? Go ahead, armor up. But we're just doing, jousting for love. So it's, blunted lances, and you're just trying to knock the guy off the horse. So, third day, that first knight wins a joust, and the knight who won on the first day wins another joust. So that knight won 2, one of them won 1, one of the other ones won 1. And I was looking at the time going, I am running out of time. We're not even all the way, we're not even halfway through the second piece. So I mentioned that to everybody, hey, we're getting short on time. You want to just shunt the week and just say whoever won this first 3 days wins this competition? Sure, yeah. So good, that's over with. Because otherwise we were talking, I mean, you could technically have 6 nights, 7 days, 3 passes each. That is a ton of rolling, and then double checking to see if people get knocked down. Get knocked off. So I just play it safe. Let me do the hunt thing, and I draw out the lines for the hunt because the hunt's like a little mini game. We have 4 or 5, 4 nights, or maybe just 3. I think it's just 3 nights again. We're doing the hunting piece, and you have to make a hunting roll to find signs of the boar, and then you do opposed hunting rolls with the boar's awareness, or I forgot what I call it, but his ability to escape, to see if there's some kind of progression or not. And the idea is once you get to the 6th mark, you've come to the boar. So you've got to beat the boar, beat the boar, beat the boar, beat the boar, right? But if you miss and the boar wins, then you go back. And I didn't want to try and do one person all the way through because, I can rely on what I know he's doing. So I try and do everybody. Everybody make their first hunting roll. Okay, first guy, you made your hunting roll, you're not doing a post hunting roll, make it. Second guy, you made your hunting roll, make your post roll, make it. Third guy, you made your hunting roll, now make an opposed roll, you make it. The third guy had a really poor hunting. I was really surprised he found the boar sign in the first place. So could not make another hunting roll every time we came back around to him. The second one got a critical success, came upon the boar, and then there's this surprise round thing. Something happens, but the boar got away. So she's back at the beginning. Player's back at the beginning. The first one makes a success, fails, 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 makes a success, makes a success. And finds the boar, if I remember right. Another one failed a fumbled hunting roll. Okay, you're lost in the woods. And the other one came across an obstacle, which did something to complicate everything again. So what do you do? Eventually, the first guy got to the boar, made made the surprise thing, attack with your spear, but their spear skill is actually fairly small. Their lance skill is high. If I would have thought about this, bad game master, bad. I would have remembered they're on horses. It's a lance attack, even if you're using a spear, right? And that would have changed the mechanics of the whole hunting thing. Because at the end of the game, we were talking about, I don't know if this hunting thing, we have to check it out again, see what's going on, because that should not have been like the way it was. Because the guy just could not beat the boar with his spear, and the boar took him down. And it took 7 rounds for the nearest player knight to get to him. And he's unconscious. The boar's on, so they drag him back to the castle, and so the boar hunt was unsuccessful. So they can't really have a party that night. But since the knights are still there, they went on the hunt. They were prepared to have a party. There's subdued party, right? So they can still do the whole chivalry, not chivalry thing, the whole music and composition deal. So you can compose and sing, or compose and play, or something else. I forgot what it was. But only one knight at this point was interested in doing any of this stuff. So they do inspiration. Inspiration is not the right word. They have a different word for Pendragon. For their composition, they do good on their composition. They do good on their singing. So they're successful. That was the same knight who won the jousting. So that knight won the overall competition. There's a whole thing between him and the lady of the castle, making a moray roll. You've got so much points. She's in love with you. We're going to propose. Yes, okay, they're going to get married. The damsel that was their lead here takes them back to the fountain. Yeah, the fountain. The third damsel takes them to her arc. They come to a castle, big, huge castle, um, and they're invited in. Um, the Baron, Lord of the Castle, is there. His daughter is serving him. That's the same girl from the very first arc that the one knight is in love with, and she has a sister who's also there. And so the girl recognizes him, father, blah 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 blah. These are the guys who saved me. We need to, bring them in and honor them and all this kind of stuff. Come in. And they have this huge feast, all this good food, and then there's times for dancing and playing games and anything you want. There's a list of skills that the players can then roll on to get checked for, that kind of thing. But then there's a little side quest because the sister knows something's going on with the younger sister knows something going on with the older sister. And so the younger sister wants to get a piece of that action too. So she has a couple of vignettes playing backgammon, asking one of the knights to help her beat her handmaiden at backgammon. That didn't work out. And then another night where the handmaiden comes over to one night, I saved my mistress. There's this terrible guy who's going to come dance with her. Go and intervene. And he jumps over the table and gets in the way and asks her to dance. And she does a little fairy magic thing, and he gets an amore for her. And the damsel who's kind of orchestrating all this stuff gets the knights together and tells, hey, here's the deal. The older sister is scheduled to get married to this other guy, which the whole party knows about because they're supposed to be supporting that. But she has a paramour, this other prince who's better this, better that, better everything. And they're in love. And if she loses her virginity, then the bad marriage guy isn't going to be interested in her. So I need to sneak her out of the castle tonight. And I need to get her across this field of briars and brambles and stuff to meet up with her paramour. I'm old. I can't do that. I need your help. And one guy says, hell no. She needs to go to Camelot and marry this other guy. That was the deal that's made. And if we do something like that, that's breaching the codes of hospitality. And yeah, it is. It's a gross breach of hospitality, guys. And so they start trying to figure out what to do. At this point, I have the younger sister come up to the guy who danced with her and pull her. Can you leave? Don't be with you. Danger? Not bodily, but my spirit, that kind of thing. And so he says, yes, before we leave, I will let you know, that kind of thing, right? And so they're trying to figure out, okay, are we going to really try and sneak her out or not? And they kind of decide, no, we're not going to do that. In fact, they start looking at the knight who's in love with the older sister, saying, why don't you just go and tell the dad that you're in love with her and that you want to marry her and get the other marriage canceled. And he wants to know that she's in love with him before he'll do that. Now there's a piece about her falling in love with him, but it's at the end. So I just pulled that forward. Okay, make your amore roll. You make it. Okay, yeah, she's in love with you. Yes, take me with you. So they decide, okay, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna go and tell the dad this is what's happening. And so the knight goes up and he gives his little spiel. It's actually pretty decent. Um, and the dad, I just invoke what would happen if he caught them escaping with the girls, right? He turns into an ogre. And so if this guy were to marry his daughter, that would ruin all of his political plans. So he gets all upset. He stands up, he kicks the chair behind him down, screams, "What?" And he starts getting bigger, and hair breathes out everywhere, and his eyes bulge, and he gets a mouthful of teeth. He picks up a bench and starts attacking the guy. So at this, everybody makes awareness rolls. Everybody's freaking out. All of the normal people are getting out of town. The daughters are hiding behind the damsel from the fountain, and here are the knights, no armor and daggers. They say, "Can we be wearing like heavy clothing for 1 point?" Sure, yeah, go ahead. And they start asking about, well, aren't there swords and shields? Where's our stuff? Stuff's in your rooms. It would take rounds for your squires to go and get your stuff and bring it out. And then if you want to actually get your armor on, that would take minutes, right? So we're in a feast hall. There should be shields and swords hanging on the walls everywhere. Oh, okay, sure, go ahead. So they send the squires to go grab the shields and swords, and so the ogre and the one knight are fighting one round. It's probably been probably been 3 rounds with just the one guy before everybody else starts to mangle on him with swords and shields and stuff. But I just did one. We wasn't sure how long combat was going to go. And there's this rule about, or mechanic about, when you're attacking or being attacked by more than one person, you divvy up your skill against all of them. Then you roll for each one. Well, I first figured, okay, half on the one guy and split the rest between the rest. If he gave half to the one guy, he would have less than 2 points against all the rest. That means he has to roll a 1 or 2 on a d20. That's useless. You might as well just not bother rolling. And so the first round, I did have him do half on the one guy, 1 point on everybody else. After that, it was just on one guy. And then it tends over, kill this guy. Once he's down, go to the next one. Then go to the next one. Go to the next one, kind of thing. And I did let them get the second round. They're up with arms, with shields and swords and stuff, but they don't have any armor on, so if they get hit, they're gonna get whacked because this guy does a ton of damage. But he's only a 13 with his shield. And they're all like 16 and stuff with their swords and stuff, and they hit, a few points here, a few points there, a bunch of points, a few points here, a bunch of points, a few points, and then whack! The guy got a critical success, double damage. Not enough to knock him down outright, but enough to make him make his roll, which he does make. Now, there's a lot more rolls going on because every round that the knights try to attack the ogre, they have to make a temperance roll. Otherwise, they have a -5 on their sword skill. Can they really look at him? That kind of thing. I think we actually did 2 melee rounds worth of stuff overall with everything happening. But that last critical hit, I start looking. Well, it wasn't enough to knock him down outright, so he doesn't fall down. But then I start looking. Wait, how many points of damage has he really taken? So I add it all up real quick, and he had taken 40 points of damage. He has 50 hit points, so he's at 10. But his unconsciousness level is at 13, so he does fall. He's unconscious. Bursts into flame. All kinds of hate and discontent and stench and stuff. So the damsel says, okay, we need to get her the older sister, across the field to her paramour, and the knight who's in love with her and she's kind of in love with him now is kind of a little crestfallen. Do we really want to do this? Well, whatever. If that's what she wants, that's what we'll do. So they all get their stuff, they get packed up, they go out. Now, since the ogre died, the brambles and stuff are all burned away, so they have no problem getting across. They get down to the cave where they're supposed to go. It's got bronze doors on it. The guy comes around. He's a knight. He's the son of the king of this other kingdom where we've been doing some stuff. And the players know that because they've read their background, but I didn't. So they're tied into this as well. And so there's some conflict going on the player side with this stuff. He does this little spiel to the girl he's in love with. Gets down, goes over to her, puts his hands up to her. She slides off the horse, but then she puts her hands up to the guy, the knight, that she's in love with. So he slides down. The mistress of love shows up, does a little spiel, opens the grotto. White limestone, green marble floor and a crystal bed. The girl and the knight go in, doors close. Eleanor is sent away, and then the Dame of Love's got her little spiel to the knights. Hey, come be part of my entourage, her group of knights, Knights of Love's Labor is what they're called. And she brings out shields and girdles for everybody. Only one knight bites off on it. Magic shield stops 10 points instead of 6. Girdle's magic 2 gives you +5 if you're in love with somebody. You have to be in love with somebody for the shield to give you 10 points. And if you're in love with somebody, then this girdle gives you +5 to a handful of skills, romance, flirting, playing harp, that kind of singing, that kind of stuff, right? Courtesy. And then there's this ending piece, and they all go back to the fountain, and there they meet the lady they met at the beginning of the road who said, go on adventure, instead of going to Camelot. She says, now we can go to Camelot. And we ended up with like 35 minutes left, so maybe I could have done the rest of that week of Lansing. Jousting. I don't know. But in that hunting thing, if I would have let them lance with the hunting, that would have made things quick. Measure 2. Things you'll learn. Happy gaming.